Well, hello there. You're watching New Vision TV. This is the Handshake. My name is Lynn Komdisha. I'm joined by Paul Busharizi. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we've been discussing the national debt and A, B, C, D, and Z about the national debt. Now, a lecturer seems to think that we need to deal with the dollar and instead buy gold. Paul, well, he says that we should buy gold and use it to hedge the local currency against the dollar, reasoning that keeping the dollar as a reserve is exposing the country to lots of uncertainties. Now, this is the university lecturer. Paul, what's the difference between the dollar and the gold?
Well, first of all, I don't know whether it was reported correctly. so there's
what do you mean?
In a previous time, I think before 1971,
right,
all currencies were pegged to the dollar. It was called the gold standard. So you could only issue as much currency as dollars you had, as gold you had.
Okay.
So, if Uganda has, maybe 1 ton of gold, that's the only money it would issue. So the gold standard was dropped in around, I think, 1970 or 71 by the Americans, and then essentially, countries didn't need to issue as much currency as a gold. So what now guarantees currencies around the world really is governments. If I trust the government, I trust the paper it issues.
What do you mean trust the government?
You see, gold was held as a reserve. As I said, you only issued as much currency as gold you had.
Yes.
So gold was the guarantor of value of your currency.
Yes.
Then when the gold standard was broken in 1970 or 71, I forget which year it was, I think it was 71, because that would have been Nixon's first year or something. Anyway, when it was broken, governments became the guarantors of their own currency.
Yeah.
Confidence in the Uganda shilling is based on how confident you are of the Uganda government's ability to run the economy. That's basically it.
Oh.
Yes. You trust your shilling because you trust the government of Uganda. If you are like in Zimbabwe, where they don't trust the government of Zimbabwe to run the economy, they don't have Zimbabwe money. But Zimbabwe has no Zimbabwe dollars anymore. It's done. It uses dollars and rand, South African rand. That shows a lack of trust in the government's ability to run the economy. But
when you talk about the lack of trust, it is the government that scrapped the Zimbabwean dollar. So
well, it reached a point where it didn't matter anyway whether they scrapped it or not. You see, people will they say will make rational decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And the Zimbabwe dollar was becoming it was worse than TP. So and they couldn't print enough. I mean, you're talking they had billions and billions. Everyone was earning $1 billion shillings a month, some ridiculous amount of money. Anyway, so this gentleman is trying to suggest that we should go back to the gold standard. Now, the problem with the gold standard, the problem with the gold standard is that it has what do you call it? It has a constricting effect on the economy. If you can only, it's like, how do I say? It's like you should only spend as much money as you earn. You shouldn't borrow. That's essentially what he's saying. Now, your resources already are not enough, and you have things to do. You've got schools to build. You've got hospitals to build. That all comes with debt. Now, if you go back to the gold standard, it will be very difficult to maneuver. I don't know how to explain it, but what leaving the gold standard did was, which has its negative effects, expanded the supply of money. Because now the government, if you trust me, I can just print. Of course, it reaches a certain level and then the imbalance is created. But that essentially is what's happened since the 1970s. And has generated all this economic activity in the last, this is almost 50 years. It's been the most dramatic creation of wealth in the history of mankind in the last 50 years. And that is down mostly removal of the gold standard.
Okay. So why does he think this is going to work?
Well, I don't want to be too uncharitable to the gentleman, but he probably read a few books and worked out that, this...
well, he's a professor.
I don't know, he's a professor of economics. You can be a professor of something else.
Okay.
Yeah, can do. But there's that aside. He thinks, of course, look, what it would do, as I said, is that it would reduce, for example, government expenditure. Because Uganda does not have, I don't think Uganda's reserves now are about $3 billion. $3 billion, actually. Another good example. Uganda's reserves are $3 billion. Now, if you get $3 billion of gold, and you said, now these are our reserves, but the government, the budget of Uganda government, this 3 billion is about, let's just say, $12 billion, 12 billion shillings. But the government's budget is 32 trillion. So you have 10 trillion versus 12 trillion versus 32 trillion. The 20 trillion, where will you come from?
We buy more gold.
With which money?
I don't know.
You're still creating capacity to buy gold, but there are things that have to be done. Schools have to be built, roads have to be built, hospitals have to be built and manned. It would constrict you. It would actually, it would cause pain.
He seems to say that way the country will be out of debt. I don't know.
Yes, that's why I'm worried. I don't know whether he was reported correctly. It doesn't follow. It doesn't follow that because you go on the gold standard that you get out of debt, you could still have debt. I mean, a classic example is really Zimbabwe again for Uganda. Zimbabwe is not on a gold standard, but Zimbabwe can only operate within how many dollars it makes, like from exports. You see, because Zimbabwe does not control its own currency. If there's a bit of a problem, a bududa, you know, the government can print some more money. In Zimbabwe, you can't print any more money. If the bududa are too bad for you guys, we don't have money for you. End of story.
Paul, you're not alleging that the country can print money anytime, anywhere.
Well, that's an interesting thing because he also alluded to printing of money, which is a story for almost another day.
Yes.
When you come down to it, it's not really governments many times that print money; it's banks that create money. So
this is confusing.
Well, it's a whole lecture, not a lecture, it's a whole course unit, I imagine, in economics in campus.
I think so.
Or in A level or whatever.
But where he seems to suggest that way, and Paul is rubbishing it, and I don't know what you think out there. Let us know what you think. Thank you so much, Paul.
Cool.